the paradox of external validation, why it is often a reason that you become successful, but why it's also the reason that you feel like a piece of shit, you feel empty, and you can't make yourself happy. You seek for external things. You want to make everyone happy. You want to make everyone look at you and think that you're cool, but you forget how to do it for yourself. We've got a little fireplace going on, and we also have a sweater for the first time in a long time because it is absolutely pouring down here in Colombia. I don't know if you guys can see it, but the weather is very bipolar here. So we've decided to cozy up a little bit while we make this video for you. So if there's one thing that I really struggled with, then it was the need for external validation. And I've actually always struggled with this since I was a little kid. I always used to make things better than they were. I always had to like change stories. Even if I actually made success, I just needed to make it a little bit better. And this was something that became so extremely normal for me at a certain point, just to lie about little things. But it also showed in the way that I lived my life. When I started making a lot of money, when I became very wealthy, you know, I always needed to constantly show off like a little Porsche logo here and a little, you know, business class seat there. And the girls that I was dating, like it always needed to be on my Instagram. And some way, this is also because of the info space, the market that a lot of entrepreneurs find themselves in. It's like you have to kind of show these things. It's kind of like, I don't even know why everyone does this. But there is this big culture in the info space that is all about, obviously, materialism, women, look at me. Probably stems down from people like Andrew Tate and Dan Bilzerian a lot, and Iman Gadzhi. But it's all very superficial. It's all very fake. And it's all very much, you know, showing off. And yes, it makes you money, obviously. But I know a lot of high performers, and this was the issue that I focused on, that I found myself in too, is that even though I was making a lot of money, I wasn't really making myself happy. I wasn't really living in truth. I wasn't really myself. I wasn't really authentic. I was wearing a mask. I was fake. And I was still constantly always needing this external validation. Even though I was successful on paper. I wasn't successful as a human being, I would say, because if you are constantly, this is where the crux comes in. If you're constantly looking to please the outside world, if you're constantly focused on what other people think of you, how other people would perceive you, you know, you're gaining status and all this and that, you forget how to create internal authority. Because every time that you move because of the external world and you forget yourself, you're saying goodbye to yourself every single time. Every single time you're choosing the external over what's here on the inside. And at the end of the day, this is where I felt most that it affected me, was that literally at the end of the day, when I was laying in bed, I always felt like I could do something better. I always felt like I could do something more. So the need for external validation was a very big problem. And it is often the reason that we become, as entrepreneurs, very successful, because it drives us to achieve great things, because we can, you know, do a lot to complete this vision that we have of how people would look at us once we make a lot of money, once I drive the fancy car, once I date the beautiful girls. Look at what would people think of me if my Instagram looked all dark and aesthetic and I had the most beautiful girl. I had all of that, and it didn't really do much for me because, to be quite frank, no one really gives a shit. No one really does. So how do you actually make yourself happy? Well, you need to cut out the external validation part. And this is what we're going to go over in this video. I want to share some of my insights because this is something that I've been struggling with for such a long time. And I have finally managed to deal with these kinds of things, to actually understand where it comes from through a journey of awareness. And that's what I want to share with you in this video. I want to share some of the things that I learned in the past 7-8 months that I've been, you know, completely rewiring my entire identity and removing all of the parts that were negative, were holding me back, and opening that up for new positive things in my life that actually caused me to grow and actually, you know, forced me to grow further and create a life that is fulfilling without the need for external validation, but the power of internal improvement. And that is something that I want to give you, because once you do that, my friend, life becomes such a great blessing. Because the moment that you start proving yourself to others, the moment that you start shifting from a performance-based identity to a life of fulfillment and a process-based identity, that is when you start to feel free. Because external validation is just simply a belief that is tied into your subconscious, which is holding you back. you should try and see it like this. You want to grow, you want to go forward, you want to become the best version of yourself. You want to, in your mind, you want to be confident, you want to be seen as confident, yet you are not really confident because you do not believe you are good enough yourself because of this inherent belief, because of this subconscious thing that you have that is like a chain with a block at the end of it, and you're dragging it along and you're trying to go, but this block is just, going over the road and it's getting stuck in things and it's holding you back from really going forward, from really manifesting and realizing the life that you want. And I dealt with this for a very long time, and eventually external validation also became a very big problem in my life. All right. And it was one of the many reasons that it caused my downfall. Now, I want to share some research with you that I dug up. When we look at clinical psychology and we look at philosophy and we look at religion and all of these things, they actually talk about external validation. They actually talk about playing a character. They actually talk about a persona. The Stoics, Buddhism, Christianity, Carl Jung, Sartre. This is a big thing in many of these different philosophies and ways of thinking. So Carl Jung, for example, Jung says the mask that becomes the face. Carl Jung named this with frightening precision. Persona is a Latin word for mask. The theatrical face enacts a war in Greek drama. Jung said we all develop a persona, the version of ourselves that we present to the world. Necessary, useful, even healthy, up to a point. The problem, Jung identified, when you live inside the mask long enough, you forget that there's a face underneath. For entrepreneurs and high earners and ambitious men, the persona usually formed early. Maybe you were the smart one, the driven one, the one who was going to make it. You got rewarded for performing that character so consistently that it stopped being a role and it became your identity. Now you're not wearing the mask, but you are the mask. And this is why many people feel like they're playing a character. They are. They just didn't consciously choose that role. Now, there's a lot of research on this, but I want to focus it down to things that were relevant to me because I don't want to talk necessarily about things that I haven't personally gone through that I don't necessarily understand. I know there's a lot of people online just basically proclaiming that they are identity change coaches and all that kind of stuff, but they haven't really gone through any of this stuff themselves. One thing that really hit for me, and I know that it will hit for you if you're anything like me, what actually drives compulsive showing off isn't arrogance. It's the opposite. There's I'll share this document in the link. There's an interesting research by Brené Brown, who spent years distinguishing shame from guilt. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am something bad. And if people really knew me, they'd see it. So compulsive external validation, the showing off, the status games, the need for approval, it is a shame management strategy. Every flex is a preemptive strike against a voice that says you are not good enough. The tragedy is that it works for about 45 minutes, and then you need another hit. You're not showing off because you're shallow. You're showing off because somewhere along the way, you concluded that your authentic self wasn't good enough, and you built a more impressive one. Now, it goes into a lot of stuff about how this actually is built up within your childhood most often, with the relationship with your parents, or maybe even like with siblings, for example, or with other social dynamics in school, teachers, and all that kind of stuff, which is very, very interesting. That's why I'll link it down in the description. But my take on this is this really hit home for me because I used the same techniques. I was a very big showing off kind of guy, and I see it with a lot of people showing off, letting them know that they are with a specific type, that they are with specific people, for example. Let me just brighten this up a little bit. And there's a quote that I want to give you. Carl Jung wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The reason showing off is exhausting is that it's running away from that acceptance. Every flex is a defensive maneuver against the self that you haven't met. And I agree with this because for me, for example, one of the things that I did was I came clean with my whole story. I stopped pretending. And the moment that I stopped pretending and I shared everything online is the moment that all of that just kind of left. I left all of it behind. I didn't have to hide anymore. I didn't have to play this double life. I didn't have to pretend anymore. And I just accepted every single thing in my life. And it gave me the ability to just move freely without that chain tied to my back with the rock that was tied to me. And it's just this it just lifted this off. Now, I know that there's a lot of people, for example, that I'm not even aware of this. But once you start making money, it's very easy to fall into this trap. It's very easy to do the things that you also see other people do online, because it does get rewarded with likes and all that kind of stuff. But you have no idea, but you do know how many guys there are in my DMs, very, very wealthy guys, very big names in the industry, that they feel like shit. Their Instagram profile looks amazing because they have curated it in such a way that it pleases others, but it doesn't please themselves. And a very big thing about this is also the lack of expression, the lack of being able to express yourself, which is something that most people don't know because they don't know their authentic self. This is something that Carl Jung dives in deeper as well. So how do you change this? How do you get rid of this? Because the problem with the external validation loop is that if you do it long enough, you are bound to head into a very miserable life where you do not feel good about anything. No kind of achievement will give you fulfillment. And achievement without fulfillment is perhaps one of the worst kinds of failure. This is something that Tony Robbins said. And the problem is that once you have a lot of options and once you have a lot of money, you have a lot of things to seek out distractions. And those distractions become wilder and wilder and wilder. Plus, it doesn't allow you to be present. It doesn't allow you to build meaningful relationships with people. For example, people that you love. You know, if you want to have a relationship with a girl, for example, but you don't have any idea about who you are because you've always been playing this character, it's going to cause you a lot of trouble, right? And that is not good for you. And it will affect your business. It will affect the way that you are able to attract new clients, the way that you are able to attract new partners or do business with other people, for example, or just build friends in general. And life just becomes so much more easy when you take off that mask, when you don't need the external validation, and when you can just move through life in order to prove it to yourself in comparison to proving it to others. So how do you do that? This is one of the big questions. I'm going to leave you with some of the strategies that I used to completely sever the need for external validation and actually live life on my own terms, actually live authentically, actually not really give a fucking shit about anything anyone thinks about me, except me, to show up every day for me, to become the best version I can be, to then share that man with the world. And I can promise you that it's liberating, it's absolutely freeing, because it is. It is. You stop living for others, you start finally living and acknowledging yourself, and you start building yourself more. And that will only give you the ability to make more impact, make more money, have better relationships, do more business. Everything in your life will excel because of that, because you just cut that rope, you break that chain that's been holding you back for such a long time, and you can actually find a lot more energy, focus to do the things that you really want to do. I mean, just think about it. How great would life be if you do not just have to think about what other people think of you all the time? How great would life be if you could just do the things that you really want to do without you having to fear of judgment, without you having to fear, what are other people going to think of me? This fucking constant need for approval, it's absolutely killing your potential for creativity, your potential for making impact. Once you start really being your authentic self, once you start living for yourself, once you start respecting yourself, because that is what it is. It's just basically a form of self-respect when you stop the need for external validation, stop living for what other people think of you, and start living to make yourself the best version of you. That is self-respect, that is loving yourself. Then the right people will also come into your world, and it will be very easy to distinguish the right people from the wrong people because you know yourself. You have this moral compass inside of you. So how do you actually deal with it? It is actually not that hard, but we have to do the work on it, and that is the inner work. So we have to reframe our belief about our identity, about ourselves, because when you have a subconscious belief that you are not good enough, and you have a performer identity, that means that you can only be loved or be seen or be appreciated when you perform, then we have to make sure that we become aware of that identity, and we have to change it. We have to reframe a new identity into our subconscious, and we do this over time. You can't do this just by thinking about this. You have to become aware. This is the most important thing in all of identity change, is becoming aware of what you're doing, becoming aware of where it's coming from, so that we can then shine a light on it. Because you will, after watching this video, still find yourself performing in some sort of ways, right? It's an awareness journey. This is an ongoing journey, right? But because you're aware of it, you'll be able to correct yourself. And once you do that more and more and more over time, you will create a pattern. And once you create a pattern, that is what the brain really is looking for. That is what the brain really instills into its programming, as it were, into its subconscious, and then you can use that to live the rest of your life as a free man, not needing external validation. Now, how nice is that? So, what are you going to do? Figure out where it's coming from. Figure out the root. Again, awareness. Take a piece of paper and a pen and write it down. Write down, where am I showing off? Where am I needing external validation? Where am I seeking approval from others? For some people, it shows up in just constantly asking other people for approval. With most high performers, it's basically just a showing off part, right? And it's this constant need for validation. It's the shame management strategy, right? But take some time, write it fucking down on this piece of paper, become aware of it, look for the symptoms first, because we're going to reverse engineer it. You can't just look at the root cause immediately. You have to look at the symptoms first. So where does it show up? Do you lie about things? Do you make things better than they are? Are you constantly trying to show off? Are you constantly asking for validation, asking for reconfirmation if it's all right? You know, that's what you have to figure out. Write those symptoms down. Once you have written those down, then you can dive a little deeper. Then you can ask yourself, well, where does it come from? What is the root of all of this? You just have to understand that you cannot outrun a subconscious belief about you not being good enough with more achievement. It does not work like that. How you want to make an identity shift. You want to reframe your identity from an outcome-based identity to a values-based identity. So the whole concept about this is, it comes from ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's one of the most recognized and durable methods for sustainable change when it comes to this sort of identity work. The easiest way that I can explain it is shifting from, did I win? Did I get more of the external to feed the external? To, did I show up today as the man that I want to show up as? Now, you cannot know the answer to the second question if you live on an outcome-based identity, because then your outcomes determine how you feel. But when you live on a value-based identity, you can do things on a day-to-day basis that are congruent with the values that you hold internally. So this comes down not to having goals or outcomes necessarily as things to achieve in life, but to be really, really, really specific about values and about being. Now, one of my values, for example, is truth. It is honesty. And I cannot stand fake behavior anymore. Not in myself, not in others. And as you will see on my YouTube channel and on my Instagram, there is nothing that I won't say. There is nothing that I do not share. I share absolutely everything. I am transparent in everything. And this is the complete opposite of what I used to be. I'm not saying that I was lying constantly, but I wasn't completely truthfully. I wasn't completely honest. So honesty, being truthful with the world and with myself, is one of my most important values, and it helps me enormously to live a better life, to create better relationships, and to do business better. Because once you hold that value for yourself and you're able to hold yourself to a higher standard with that value, and you hold yourself accountable from that value, you'll be able to spot it in others. I can see immediately right now when someone is lying or when someone is this external validation, and it tells me a lot about these people. It gives you a lot of knowledge about, do I want to do business with these people? Do I want these people close to me? Do I want to step into these people's lives? It gives you a lot of direction to work in and to navigate through life, which is why so many people feel lost, is because they don't have any values. They don't know where to go. They don't feel a direction because they don't know who they are themselves. They don't really know what they value. They only value the things that they've heard from someone else online. I value freedom. What the fuck does that even mean to you? So get really specific about values, all right? Who do you want to be as a man? This is very important. There is a great book about this as well. I would recommend you read Ego is the Enemy from Ryan Holiday, which talks about this a lot as well. Outcome-based identity, feeding the ego, for example. So it's an easy read, and it helps a lot with understanding this concept a bit more. A really good exercise that I want you to do is you take a piece of paper again and you write down statements. You write down I am statements, but there's one rule. You cannot use titles or achievements or things that people can see. So it is only character, like I am honest, I am truthful, I am disciplined, I am consistent, I am healthy, right? Whatever these things are for you, just take some time to do this. But write these things down and you will see very soon where you are dropping the ball. Because, for example, if you say like, I'm truthful, you know when you write it down if you are truthful or not. But you can still write it down because it's what you want to become. But then once you've written it down, it is tangible. It's like signing a contract with yourself. Again, everything is about becoming more aware. Once you do that, life becomes, I wouldn't say easy mode, but it becomes significantly easier to change. And this is what most people don't do. Most people just simply live on autopilot and they wonder why they feel miserable. It's because they're not aware. They're not aware of what they are actually running on, what their subconscious programming actually really is. Now, and then another thing that is very, very important is one of the best things that I've found in order to make yourself proud and to live authentically for yourself and to create internal approval, internal validation instead of seeking it outward, is to do things in private that no one else sees, to do things just for you. No content, no signaling, no showing off. And this could be reading, it could be maybe gym, fitness, whatever it is, something that feeds you, that you enjoy. It could be learning. I'm learning Spanish, for example. Now, I do not really share that online, but sometimes a little bit. But it could be something like that, for example. Just whatever it is. I call it build the backstage life. Build something in private. Build something just for you. Because once you can do those things without the need for showing off, you're really just doing it for yourself. And it really, really helps a lot in order to create internal validation. Then another thing, and this is probably one of the hardest things that I had to do, is just accept that you're not going to be good at everything. Accept that you are, in some cases, less than other people or less skilled than other people, and that it's okay to not be perfect at everything, and that you can actually fail, and that you can actually not just be good at something and just let that be. Let other people take the win, try to learn, be curious, for example. One of the biggest mistakes that I made is that I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to look perfect, have the perfect girl, the perfect life. Everything had to be perfect. Physical shape, everything perfect. Well, perfect is fake. Perfect doesn't really exist, does it? So I think it's very important that you accept that there is also things in your life and that you can actually also step into that role of not being the best in the room per se, but you can be the most curious in the room. And then another step that you can try, which is probably the hardest and it's the most annoying, and that is just constantly monitoring yourself before making a decision. So when I post a lot of content, for example, and especially in the beginning when I started posting content, I really had to kind of just like check myself, like, am I doing this because of who I am, or am I doing this because I want to show off something? And sometimes it still like kind of creeps in a little bit that I want to show off something. Might be a girl, might be a car, whatever it is, because obviously it was so deeply rooted in my identity. But that is just, again, that awareness journey. And don't beat yourself up when you feel yourself, when you see yourself slipping back into those old patterns, but just recognize that it happened and then be aware of it. Next time something like that comes up, the goal is to create a moment between impulse and decision. And that moment is where you basically just reflect, hey, is this in line with who I want to become, or am I doing this because I want to show off? When you can ask yourself that question for a long enough period of time, then eventually you will get very clear on who you are, what you want to post, what you stand for, what you're against. And then you can just kind of let all of that stuff go, and life becomes significantly more easy, more fulfilling, and much more peaceful. And it will help you to live a more fulfilling life, to be happier, to create more stuff, to be more creative in general, to have better relationships with people, to make more money. Everything in your life will be better because you're not pleasing anyone besides yourself. And if you are religious, you can please God, you can please Jesus, but you are not busy with what other people think of you anymore. And that is hugely and immensely freeing. And I would advise everyone to have a deep dive into their life and see if this is something that they can also progress in, because it has literally set me free. It's one of the reasons that I am able to live life the way that I do now. It's the reason why I'm able to grow the way that I'm growing and build a big business, make a lot of impact, still be happy with everything that I do. Because again, I was miserable before this, guys. I was making a lot of money, but I was miserable because I wasn't even living for myself. I wasn't authentic. I needed external validation. And it's definitely a thing that you need to get rid of. So that is it for this video, my friends. If you want to work with me one-on-one, if you want to send a message to me on Instagram, we can see if that's something that we can work out. Definitely give us a follow if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao.